What's up guys, on this episode of Pistonhead Garage, it's part 2 of my fuel pump upgrade. Okay, I'm sorry for the angle here, this stuff's in the way. It's really jank in here right now, I'm not gonna lie. We had some issues, like I said, with the fuel lines in the tank blowing out. And I wasn't sure if it was, like I was just seeing low fuel pressure, so I wasn't sure if the pump was dead or what, so we kind of jankily wired together the other pump. And of course the problem didn't get any better, so we figured out that wasn't the issue, but now I've got this janky wiring. Fortunately, pretty much all this is going bye-bye because the new kit has new wiring, and I'll replace these connectors with something that's not so sketchy. The other nice thing about this kit is that it's going to have so the fittings come out basically on their side rather than coming straight out. So the cover that goes on top of this whole opening should fit, which would be really nice. So that helps further keep fumes out if there are any. But yeah, so basically how it's set up right now is I've got a fuse in here, a 30 amp fuse that goes up to the relay, which is just behind the carpeting there. And the relay, of course, is triggered by the ECU and it fires at the pump. So what I'm gonna have to do is add a second relay, and I'm gonna replace this with a nicer blade fuse block so I can have multiple circuits on it, and then I'll have one for each fuel pump coming in here, so that way we're not running 2 fuel pumps off of one fuse, because obviously that would be bad. If that one fuse blows, now I have 0 fuel pumps instead of having 1 fuel pump. So that's gonna get fixed. And then, like I said, this wiring is going to get replaced with better stuff, and I'm going to relume all this because I tore it all apart, just try to figure out what was going on. So yeah, I'll get all this taken apart, get the lines off and get the wiring off, and I'll pull the factory unit out and we'll get it on the bench and I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, so here's what came out of the tank. This is my nasty ass setup. I mean, it works, it just doesn't look the prettiest. So this gasket comes off. So this is the gasket that seals the top of the tank, and I think it's fine. Like, this seals against this here, it just goes on that. It's like mint. I mean, there's nothing wrong with this seal, so that's not the problem. The problem is these 2 fittings here. As you can see, there's the white Teflon washers on the front side, and I couldn't fit them on the back side. So let me flip this around. See if I can kind of zoom in and get a view of that. So if you look here, right, it's just covered in JB Weld. I figured, you know, hopefully that would do the trick, but you can see all the ribbing in here to kind of structurally support all this. I tried to trim it back as much as I could around where the fittings go, but like, I mean, I just couldn't quite get in there. I didn't have the right tool for my Dremel, the right fitting or whatever, so, you know, I could have done a better job, and because of what I did, I have leaking fuel all the time. So, and like I mentioned with the check valves, that's what these guys here are. I'm sure everybody knows what a check valve is, but in case you don't, basically it just has a little flapper on the inside that opens one way, so fuel can be pumped out, but fuel can't come back. So if one pump is pumping, the fuel can't go out into this Y and then back down the tube, back down the hose. It'll get stopped by this check valve, and it can't come back out the bottom side of the pump, or the intake of the pump, because obviously that's going to cause some problems with fuel pressure down the line. The reason why this hose isn't connected is because I just was having issues with fuel pressure and stuff, and the hose is blowing up, and I do have, this is 250 PSI rated hose now, so it should be fine, but I was worried about the OEM hose that I have right here having problems, so this one is the only one that's in use right now, and it's all the 250 pound rated hose. But yeah, so this is obviously, it worked, but it could be better, and Powerhouse Racing already does a great job of making this, so I figured why bother messing with it, we'll just go with something that's pre-made. And then of course we've got our pumps here, the 2 AEM 320s, and they work great, but the 450s were free, so I'm just going to go ahead and use them and sell these pumps. And then this is the bracket I was mentioning that holds it all together. You can see from factory, it slides into this. There's a little plastic bracket in the tank that this slides into, and then you can see how it holds the pumps and the OEM hardline and stuff here. So the new one, right? See, that's the same. The difference being here is that now we have this rod, which is going to go, I believe, on the inside of this or something. I'm not 100% sure. I'll have to figure this out as I go. I am a little concerned though. The height of this is quite a bit different. So I'm going to assume, because I believe the pumps themselves sit pretty much in the middle of the tank, I'm assuming that this is going to go this way, which is going to put the pumps down in the one side of the tank, kind of in that little saddle area. Yeah, I'm not sure how else it'll go, because this will go here and hold the pumps, but you can see that's quite a bit lower. Mind you, the pumps themselves won't stick out. They're going to sit right here. Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's a lot lower, but I guess we'll find out what happens. This is supposed to be for the S14, S15, and R34 chassis, so we'll put it all together and hope that it works, basically. I'm going to loosely assemble all these brackets together and then situate the pumps in there, and then I can figure out what we need to do for wiring. So I'll move this shit out of the way and then we'll come back. Okay, so this is basically what the bracket's going to look like. This nut isn't tight yet because I'm gonna wait till it's in the tank and then position this however it needs to be. But like I said, it kind of, if this is the tank and it sits on its side like this, there'll be two humps here and here. This will sit down in the one hump, and then the fancy jet doodad on the top hat will move fuel from one side to the other somehow through some magic, and then the pumps will pick that up as well. So to install the pumps, pretty easy, I think, here. So the connectors obviously are kind of in the way, but we just got to feed that through first, like so. And hopefully this will fit. There we go. Bit of a tight squeeze, but she's in. I'm going to loosen off these bolts just a little bit more. I think they're pretty much, yeah, they're not threaded in there now. So because this is it's a pretty solid aluminum band, it's not going to be super easy to get these in. Oh. It's extremely tight, actually. Try to get these bolts right out of here. It's gonna take both of them out. Might as well remove everything. This aluminum is very stiff. It's not like a band really, as much as just like an actual billet part that they put some holes in a little slot here so they can clamp down. Actually, the Deishworks fuel filter is pretty much the same, but it wasn't this tricky to get the filter in the housing. It was actually pretty loose. There we go. Okay, I didn't have the bolts out all the way. That's the problem. So now they're out. I can slide these right in. Okay, we'll feed that through there. Push this guy in. Feed this pump in. Look at that, nice and tight. And I try to make sure they're clocked right together like that. And now we'll feed the little screws back in here. And I don't think they need to be super tight, because as you saw, like, these things do not want to come out. I figured just get them snug enough that that they aren't going to come out, because obviously tightening one is going to loosen the other if you don't do it evenly. So I feel that's pretty good. Loctite probably isn't going to do much. I'm pretty sure that Loctite will dissolve in gasoline, so I'm just going to thread these guys in. Worst case scenario, if they do come out, I doubt the pumps are going to go anywhere. And the screws aren't going to be picked up by anything in the system. The pumps can't suck them up. So I don't think it's going to be in the world, of course, but you obviously don't want that to happen. Alright, there, they're nice and snug, pumps are in. And then, although I don't need to put these on yet because it's probably going to get in the way, I'm going to just kind of demonstrate. Shove this guy on. Ugh. They definitely go on tight, and you don't want them to come off, so better that they're tight than loose. Ugh. There's one. I'll show you. So on these, there's the actual inlet for the pump here, and then this little ring right here with the spikes in it, it grabs onto this post right there, and that keeps this from coming off. So I'm going to try to ram these in here. So like I said, they're going to overlap, but I don't think it's going to be a big problem as long as I can mash them together. As long as there's no restriction to the flow, it's going to be fine. And the thing is, I mean, I haven't installed these before, and if you look at the pumps that were in there, they're also kind of mashed together, overlapping. So, although I'm going to tell you right now that this is becoming a bit of a problem, they don't seem to want to. They don't seem to want to go in next to each other. I think they're just a hair too close together. So what I can probably do is rotate them just a bit. So if I do that, yeah, there's no instructions on there. They have instructions for the R32, which is a completely different tank setup from the R34 and the S chassis, so it doesn't really help much. Okay, so that I think is better. We'll push these back into place. Could probably rotate these a bit closer. There we go, like that. And now I'll tighten them down. Okay. There. So now they're pretty much facing each other, but there's enough room that we can get these socks to sit next to each other, and they overlap, but they're not bashing into each other. And I'm thinking that this sticks out far enough that it's in the direction towards the inside of the tank that it's not going to get caught up on anything. So the next step here, I guess, is I'm going to do the plumbing for the two pumps to the top pad. So I'll get that together and then we'll come back. Okay, so here's everything ready to go. I took the lines off the other pumps. And I also found this when I was looking around. This is a piece of the hose that was in the tank. And as you can see, it just ripped itself apart. I don't know what kind of pressure those AEM pumps put out, or any of these pumps for that matter, I guess, but apparently it's enough to blow up this line, which I think, actually it's split twice, you can see here. I think this is rated for 60 PSI, which, I mean, the car runs a base fuel pressure of about 44 or 45 PSI, and under boost, well, I mean, theoretically speaking, if I'm getting 1 PSI per pound of boost, I'm running 18 pounds of boost, which means I'm getting almost 20 pounds of fuel pressure, which puts me over that 60 PSI limit. But you think it's only momentary, and I don't know if I was really ever hitting 18 pounds of boost every time I did a pull, because I don't think I was really laying into it that much once I got it back. Anyway, doesn't really matter exactly how it happened, but it happened. So this hose is rated for working pressure of 250 PSI. So it can consistently take that 250 PSI, no problem. This is 3/8 hose, which is about equivalent to, I think, about a -6 size. So, and of course it fits the 3/8 barbs that are on all the outlets and stuff here. So anyway, so for the pump, just take the protective cap off here. This is actually nice. These are barbed. The AEM pumps which you might be able to see here, are not barbed at all. Well, there's a little bit of a lip here, but nothing really to hold it. So that's also an issue that I was worried about, like was the pressure blowing it off, but it didn't happen, and it probably won't happen now that we're doing this higher output stuff. So anyway, I'll just shove the hose on there. Actually, I should probably loosen this clamp off a bit first. And we got her on there, it's over the barb. And then we'll just tighten her down. Make sure you don't like completely reef down on these things. The barbs themselves on these guys here on my my check valves are plenty sharp to keep this from popping off or leaking. So I'll just get it nice and snug. You can see it kind of bulges out a little bit, but any tighter than that, you can end up cutting the hose. This is nice because the bands have like a lip on them, so they're less likely to do that. But you know, just be careful. So yeah, so we got the line coming off the pump, and then on the check valve, make sure that if you're using these that the arrow points away from the pump, because that's obviously the way you want fuel to go. Otherwise, you're going to have a big problem when it's trying to push fuel the wrong way. I don't think these are pretty cheap. I don't think they can handle the pressure from one of these pumps, like head on. They might just break, but you know, just make sure it's facing the right way. And then of course, the hat side, just shove this guy over the barb fitting there, and I'll just move this down so you can kind of see it over the barb. Pretty straightforward. Get the wires out of the way, and we'll tighten that one down as well. Okay, so we're all set now. The two check valves are facing the right direction. Everything is plumbed in and tightened down, so that's all good to go. So the next step is to wire the pumps in. So it's pretty straightforward. They share a common ground, which is this wire right here. So I'm basically just going to splice the two grounds from here into this, and then the positive can be any one of these three wires. It doesn't really matter which wire goes to which pump, as long as whichever wire I'm not using, I also make sure I match up on the connector so I don't end up wiring positive power to the wrong wire and can't figure out why a pump is running. So for simplicity's sake, I'm only going to use the two wires that have stripes on them. One's got a black stripe, one's got a white stripe. I don't really care which pump is which is one, which is two, because in the end only one of them, they're the same pump, and you know, if I want them both to operate, I'll put both power to both of these. If I want one of them to operate, I'll just put power to one of these. So that's pretty easy. So anyway, in order to do the connectors here, I've got the connectors included. They come with the pins and they come with the seals. So I'm just going to strip a little bit off of each of these here, these two wires, and I'll pin them into the positive side on one of these terminals. And then for the ground, I'm just going to I have some extra wire. I'm going to basically just take two wires into a butt connector and then splice them into one end, and then pinch this into the other side, crimp it down, and run those two pieces of black wire into the other side of the connectors. Pretty straightforward. So I'm gonna get all that crap together, and then we'll come back. So basically all I did here was I crimped the connectors together and plugged them into the pumps, and then for the fuel sending unit wires I installed a Deutsch connector, and that allows me to disconnect the sending unit from within the tank and make the hat removable easy. And I think that's as good as any place to leave off on part 2, so stay tuned. Part 3 will be out soon, and I'll finish this install, and then we'll move on to some bigger and better things and hopefully get this car running. So of course, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out on that third part, and make sure you give this video a like if you liked it. And as always, I'm Garrett, and I'll see you next time on Pistonhead Garage.